Morning.
Good afternoon by 9 seconds. Hello. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see you on the call again. Thank you very much for joining us, Dee and Kathy and all of those that are jumping online. So, yes, we are here for another amazing interview with the incredible Jost Sawyer, aka the Lifestyle Medicine Man. And yeah, I hope you're all getting a lot out of the previous interviews we've done. What are you liking the most, Dee, about what you're getting out of the interviews and information that Yoss is sharing at this interesting time in history?
I'm really, there's nothing actually that I can give you specifically right now, but what I'm really loving is how he can connect modern day health challenges to the Chinese medicine of the yin and the yang. The one that specifically, I guess now it's popped into my mind, is when he was talking about the connection with when it was the women's sexuality and breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
was that was a massive aha because I've had aunts that have had breast cancer and have been restricted in
Yeah.
sexuality. It was such a yeah. What I do love is how he manages to connect them both, and it just makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great share. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's just got so much to offer, the ancient wisdom of TCM, hey? And I don't know anyone better than Yoss to share with us about that. So thank you for sharing, Dee. Let's get the intro underway. So hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for being here and sharing in the extraordinary wisdom that our very special guest, Jost Sawyer, aka the Lifestyle Medicine Man, is providing us. My name is Justin Phillips, and myself, my wonderful wife, Nicole Danis, live on beautiful Bribie Island in Queensland, Australia, where we're streaming in from, and we are passionate about helping and empowering people with health and happiness and prosperity, and sharing the extraordinary life experiences and lessons that we have learned and that we are so grateful for. And one of those is the amazing information we've learned from the incredible Jost Sawyer over the years. Before we get started, I'm going to ask for your cooperation, please, not to record the call, not to distribute it to mass media or social media sites, no Facebook, Twitter, etc., please. But we will record the webinar for you and we'll post the links, and we're actually doing a Facebook Live into the Facebook group Renew with Redox. So if you would like to be a part of that Renew with Redox Facebook group, it's a private group, please contact the person that invited you to come along and watch today's webinar, and they will invite you into the group where you can see all the recordings of previous interviews, as well as heaps of information on the redox and other things that can help you with your health and well-being. I've muted all of you to keep the background noise to a minimum, but at the end of the call, we can by all means, we want to answer your questions. So please pop your questions and your comments in the chat box. If you're listening to the Facebook Live, you're welcome to come and join us on the live Zoom. I'll put the link in there for you. And yeah, please engage with us and let us know what you're finding most interesting about what we're discussing today, and also about any questions that you may have. So I'm guessing many of you here on the call today are watching the replay, are looking for an improvement in your health and the health of your loved ones, and I certainly hope that we can empower you on your healing journey. Today we are speaking with the amazing Jost Sawyer. And Jost Sawyer was born in 1958 in Germany. He is a doctor of Chinese medicine. I was very privileged and very grateful to have met Jost when he was the supervisor of the student acupuncture clinic at the Australian College of Natural Medicine, where I was studying for a number of years in natural medicine. And Jost has an incredible background in health and fitness. He's always had a massive passion for that. He was actually a national representative for competitive snow skiing, bodybuilding, triathlon, Ironman training, Kung Fu and Tai Chi have always been a big part of his life. But when he realized that fitness wasn't the whole equation, that vitality was a big part of the equation, that's where Chinese medicine came in. This led to decades of research into how to live, how to use nutritional supplements with an optimal diet, therapeutic exercise, weightlifting, martial arts, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, to make you feel good. And then Jost added the 24-hour movement of Qi, a kind of Chinese medicine version of the body clock. And that connects our day-to-day activities to the natural cycles. And he developed his Qi cycle lifestyle. And this is the ultimate in lifestyle medicine. It's founded on thousands of years of Chinese medicine, and with over 30 years of Jost's academic research and practical observations from living it, Jost is a dynamic speaker. He's an author of many books. He's renowned for his very inventive and entertaining presentations on the lifestyle medicine. And he really is an authority in this area. I know of no better person to help us interpret the age-old wisdom of traditional Chinese medicine and apply it to modern-day living. So Jost has written many books. I'll put his website and so forth in the chat box here and in the Facebook Live so that you can go and access his free resources and purchase other his books or herbs and bits and pieces that he talks about. And today we are talking about 100 days of attitude. So 2020, it's not over yet, right? It's been a strange year, but it's not over. And there's a lot that we can do before the end is out. So lots of people are thinking that once we get through 2020, everything's going to go back to normal. But, you know, maybe it's changed forever. Maybe, you know, that time is gone and we have to adapt to a new time. And our time on earth is precious. We can't afford that attitude. We can't sit the year out just writing it off and waiting for change. You know, it goes against our nature. Our organs can't function that way. It makes us sick, depressed, weak, panicky, angry, or anxious. There's over 100 days left of 2020, and that's 100 opportunities to wake up, take charge of your life, make the world better, breathe the air, love the trees, be a better person, build your health, expand your consciousness, find your purpose, or be of benefit to others. And this week, Jost is going to talk about the therapeutic benefits of direction, of how to find it in times of turmoil. So, big welcome to our incredible guest speaker for today. Jost, whereabouts are you? I know you're there somewhere. Can't see you. I thought I saw him. I know he joined. Maybe he's dropped out. Okay, no doubt. No, there he's there. He's there. Where are you?
Kick me out.
Did it kick you out? Sometimes it does that. Sorry about that, mate.
Yes. He said I'm not authorized.
I'm finding like security and privacy in this day and age is getting a little bit ridiculous. Yeah, even just to Facebook Live this, I had to go through a new security protocol. So things are always changing. But that's the beauty of adapting to life, right? So thank you so much for being with us today, Jost Sawyer. Woo, yeah, Dragon's Wild. Woo, yeah, all right. So, yeah, you know, I was reading out, you know, your intro, that fantastic summary of what we're going to talk about today. You know, change your life, make the world better, breathe the air, love the trees, be a better person, build your health. And I'm thinking, Jost has actually forgotten something now. I'm really quite surprised. I was expecting to see have better sex, and it just wasn't there, you know. So, like, I don't know, maybe you're feeling conservative. It's always there. Fantastic. That's right. And I love your how you refer to it, how, you know, energy is limitless and all we have to do is get excited and all of a sudden we're energized, you know.
That's what works.
One of the many things that's magical about life. So thanks for joining us again this week. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes. And spring has sprung at least in the southern hemisphere. And I am, been getting into a bit of detoxing and getting into writing my goals and things like that again. I've been working on a few bits and pieces and looking at, you know, how my daily method of operation, as I refer to it, is like the things that I need to do to invest in myself and invest in my business and be a force of change in the world that I'd like to see. So yeah, I think this is a great timing to talk about this topic. There's lots of people in the world that I've spoken to that are a bit stuck. You know, they're feeling stuck. They may be literally locked up. They might be stuck inside, except for an hour a day. But you can always take charge of your mind. And so, what does Chinese medicine tell us about having direction in life?
Yeah, direction is obviously all about progress. And obviously now it goes into a different definition of what progress is. So direction indicates progress. If we're experiencing progress, we are healthy. So the aim is to have progress that is in line with your direction. Yes. So when it comes to the definition of progress in Wikipedia, it's moving towards an aspired goal. But in Chinese medicine, progress is returning to your original nature. So this is a totally different view on the whole thing. So Chinese medicine is always primarily concentrated on focus and interest in the well-being and wellness of the soul. It's not really that much connected to the physical, because it knows it's only temporary. It knows we're only here for a little while before we're going to move on. But the journey that we're here for, in its essence, is eternal. And in Chinese medicine, every incarnation we have, we will continue with that same idea that we were created with. So we've got a very specific agenda. Otherwise, like the Chinese medicine say, out of the one became the two out of the three, and that gave the rise to the millions and millions and millions of beings. So it all comes from the same source, but then it got divided into different ideas. So essentially we share the same source, but we have a different idea. So we differ in our idea, but we share the source. And that's what Chinese medicine looks. That means we are created with this idea in mind, and the idea is now to follow up on that idea. So then obviously whatever that idea is, it needs to be in context to the physical, because according to Chinese medicine, the human being has been placed as the custodian of looking after the earth. We have come from the stars. We descended from the stars onto earth as the custodian to look after the development and the progress of earth. So the earth is a very specific ecosystem. And that ecosystem can only run if you don't interfere with the individual idea of each little ingredient of that ecosystem. Once you muck around with one ecosystem, it can't evolve. Yeah. So because of that shark attack at the Gold Coast last week, killing all the sharks will not resolve the situation. It's an ecosystem. Yeah. And so we need to understand that everything got its place, everything. And the idea is now to tap into this, what is our function within this massive ecosystem that keeps going? And that's the journey of the soul, according to Chinese medicine. And that needs to be addressed as our main progress. That's the only reason why we're here for, to progress, to focus on that. So regardless, Chinese medicine states already 2,000 years ago that being here always will have a challenge. So at the moment, we've got COVID, we've got Victoria, we've got a premiere in Victoria that a lot of people don't agree with. We've got all kind of obstacles. And unfortunately, a lot of people now have sort of finished off on 2020. And, yeah. And what we see is a lot of posts circulating around on the internet saying that 2020 was a joke. For example, that post about, Return to the Future, where he says to the car, don't set it to 2020.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's incredible. The fact is, like, we can't sit out to 20 and waiting next year. It's going to be different. Next year is going to be another challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an endless. And if you would look at how the masters consider the situation, they would say, as life progresses towards a better and better life, the transformation is more intense. Yes. And that means obviously the challenges will be more intense. So the challenge we have now most likely will be more challenging next year.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's going to be, whatever you do, don't set your car on 2021.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So the fact is that we're going through a transformation means we don't know what will be next. Yep. So we can't see what is next. And the idea is to actually move away from that, to not knowing what is next, by focusing on what is within. Chinese medicine always recommends, when we are in the midst of a heavy, intense transformation, don't focus on what's next, focus on within. Go within. Yep. Because in there is the guidance. Yeah. And that's the Tao. You just know within what to do. That's why I'm always bringing it back to sex, because if you get aroused, you know what to do. You don't have to plan.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
the drive that takes over. If you're hungry, you know what to do. If you're thirsty, you know what to do. You know, and
Yeah,
so where did it come from? Yes, and obviously that's intelligence given to us. Why this massive drive, and that drive is related to your individual drive, and everyone's got that idea in relation to the drive,
yeah,
and that means within is the answer to what's next.
yeah.
So,
I
for
found this year's very much for me been about that. It's like, learning to get out of the head and all the worry and all the hype of media, and actually learn to switch that off and get back into the heart space, like more than any other year, for the personal development, professional development, coaching, that I'm a part of, is much more about heart space than head space this year.
yeah, oh yeah, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
really, really been good. Like, it's been quite enjoyable and pleasant to be more in that space. It's calming.
yeah, the fact that I mean, no one can say what's going to be next. We don't even know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, that's right. We're certainly getting censored. Holy cow. Censorship's off the Richter scale these days.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the news, you go, what is going on? Yeah. So one expert says this, immediately there's an expert who says the complete opposite. So whom are you going to listen to? Then the premier says, I don't make decisions. The person who makes the decision says the premier makes the decision. Like, it's just like,
Yeah,
go the other way.
I love the old saying, like when you're pointing the finger, there's
Yeah.
three fingers pointing back at you. There's a lot of finger pointing going on this year.
Yeah, we can't. The fact is, we can't make sense of it. It's just not. But it's a challenge, and that means it's given to us. Like this is being here in the physical, according to Chinese medicine, is always a challenge. There's always an obstacle. There's always something that needs to be conquered. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's how we expand it. That's how we make it bigger. Yeah. Destruction and creation coexist. That is the philosophy of yin and yang.
Yeah.
To produce refined proteins, you have to eat to destroy those coarser proteins into refined amino acids, which then will be generated into a stronger body. So it's the creation destruction is aspect of the digestive processes. So the internal organs constantly destroy, then create. So the destruction is an aspect of it. And we need to understand that this is part of our being here, so we can't get around it. But we have got given within us the idea of what we are. And the idea is now to connect to that. And if we then focus on that, we will have progress in our life. And the progress from a Chinese medicine perspective is return to the original nature. And that is developing your true self. Because you can't, like, the idea is not to look outside, the idea is to look within. Because we have now been shown over and over that we can't rely on anyone expert's advice anymore, otherwise we go crazy. So
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So we got to go elsewhere, and the elsewhere is within. Let nature guide us. Let the within, the Tao, guide us, and that's exactly what it's about. Once we understand what to focus on, life changes, and that's what I want to take through this today, because we got 100 days of 2020 to make this an awesome 2021.
Absolutely.
Because if you focus on developing the right attitude towards it, then it's going to be big next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to be always big. It always will be big. The idea is to go within. So developing the true self is always the main aim in Chinese medicine. That means it would look at having a false self as a problem and the pathology. And how do we connect to the true self? And that's already written 2,400 years ago in the Tao Te Ching, in the Tao Te Ching. And that's a quote I've sent you. From knowing to not knowing is superior. From not knowing to knowing is sickness. So that's the main focus. We're going to, everything on this talk today, in order to develop the 100 attitudes towards greatness and progress, we're going to look at what did it really mean from a Chinese medicine perspective.
And that's 4,200 years old.
2,400 years ago by Lao Tzu.
Oh, 2,400 years ago.
Yep. So I'm going to refer to that quote over and over because it really is instrumental right now. From knowing to not knowing is superior. From not knowing to knowing is sickness. If you're trying to go if you want to go the path of knowing right now, you will get mad very quickly.
Yep.
Yes, it's a classic example of how the Tao Te Ching 2,400 years ago is already telling us what's going on with life in the midst of transformation. You can't go by knowing. If you're going to seek advice to know, if you want to know, you will get lost more and more and more and more and more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's so what it will. If you start to go from, so you say, okay, what is going on with COVID, and you're trying to go from not knowing to knowing, you will lead to sickness, according to Chinese medicine. Why is that? Because obviously you will get lost very quickly by not knowing what's going on anymore. But you're trying to know, and because you're desperate trying to know, you're holding on to all those different ideas, but they're actually completely removed from your true self. And in no time you get sick. So this is what I want to address today, how this quote is so instrumental in 2020.
Yeah, yep.
It's the most instrumental quote for 2020. Yeah. So because this is because when the Tao Te Ching talks about from not knowing to knowing is sickness. So when we seek knowing, it's sickness. It means the development of the false self. Whereas if we go from knowing to not knowing, it's the path of the true self. And obviously they like to say things in very sort of mystical ways, but I'm going to make it practical today. So I'm going to take through all those steps in order to look into what that really means.
Awesome.
That's the other quote I want to share, if you want to put that up.
Yep.
And that's, losing touch with the true nature imparted by heaven, react to life by creating a false self built out of belief and colored by our interpretations of life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what it means is, if we're losing touch with our true nature, which is given to us by heaven, we made out of the one and have been divided into the many, many millions of beings, but it comes from the one. Mm-hmm. So if you lose touch with what we are, which is imparted to us by heaven, we got no other choice than to create an idea about who we are. We need to create an identity that's removed from the original nature. And that is based on beliefs and colored by interpretations of life. And you will see, that's why we got that massive drift now with COVID. It's a battle of those who believe. Mm. It's a battle of those who interpret what it is. One party believes this, the other party believes this. So one party interprets Dan Andrews is evil, the other party interprets Dan Andrews is God. And so it's getting fundamental. And fundamental means it's based on beliefs. It's based on the colored interpretation of life. So the idea is now you can't put a rational basis on that, who is right and who is wrong. If you're trying to make right, if you're trying to understand what is right and who's right, you're going to go in circles. Yeah. Yeah. And so what we see now is people get more and more and moved away from the true nature. There was a very interesting statement today that said, they asked Dan Andrews, when did you sleep last time? And he said like 6 months ago.
Yeah, that is a great question. I ask politicians questions like that. Yeah. You know, what's their reading rate and stuff like that. And they look at me as though I'm like a moron asking them something like that. But I'm thinking, well, your main job is to process information and make decisions. So like how much you can read, you know, is important. Where if you don't know how to look after yourself and sleep so that your brain is in a good place that you can process information and make decisions that affect the whole state, that is a problem.
Yeah, that's exactly why we got that problem. That is why the Tao Te Ching 2,400 years ago already said, if people know how to govern themselves, politicians are needed. If the people don't govern themselves, politicians are needed. If politicians are needed, the people will suffer.
That's a great quote there. Oh, I'll say that one again.
Yeah. So if the people govern themselves, we don't need politicians. If the people don't govern themselves, we need politicians. If we, then people will suffer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's it. Already has been identified 2,400 years ago. So we need to go the true ruling of this of our life is within, and that's the power within, and that's obviously what I want to get into today. We all are connected to that power, and it was given to us and imparted by heaven on every one of us. Everyone was born has been imparted on themselves uh, the connection to the power that created everything. So all in us is the power to create. Yeah. And obviously through beliefs and interpretations, we disconnect from that. Yeah. So when we do martial art training and yoga training, we're learning how to forget the belief in the analysis we have about life in order to discover the true self. So it's by forgetting that we discover. Yeah. If you forget, you suddenly discover what you've got. And but that requires to live in a certain way. And with politicians, they don't live in the way which will cultivate the connection to the Tao. And as a result of that, they get caught more and more and more in beliefs and interpretation and analysis till eventually they believe what they believe.
Yeah, yeah,
And that
totally.
becomes fundamental, then it becomes fundamental, and now the people suffer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we see now. Yeah. And so the belief takes over. And the belief becomes now its own identity. It becomes a different self. But that belief is not the real self because it's disconnected from that what has been imparted on by heaven. So the only way for it to not be disconnected from it is by living a life that follows the Tao, and that requires lots of rest, lots of sleep, time for cultivation, time for meaningful connections, etc., etc., etc. As soon as we don't have that opportunity, we're disconnecting from what is imparted onto us by the Tao, and instead we need to create something else, which is we're developing a false belief, a false self. And that then starts generating itself power, and now it needs the validation of the outside to nourish itself. So it gets more and more and more onto the outer rather than into the inner. So which is why it gets fundamental and people will starting to suffer. And so this is where it gets very, very interesting. So what we're trying to do here is obviously develop 100 days of attitude that will develop the return to the original nature. And the original nature is our true self. That is who we are before we were created. When we were created, that what is imparted onto us by heaven. And that is the true self is the 5 Shen, which we talked about last week.
Yep.
And I'll go through it obviously today a bit more in a bit more basics basis. And the 5 Shen become alive by the 5 Qi. So, and the 5 Qi is the 5 elements represents the 5 Qi. So what we talked about last week about the 5 Shen, that means each of the 5 fundamental organ has got in there imparted the spark of who we are in our true nature. Mm-hmm. That then becomes alive in the physical by the 5 elements. So what makes the physical alive is the dynamic of the 5 elements. And the 5 elements, in short, is metal, which is the clouds, nourish the water. The water rains, it becomes the rain. The rain then nourishes the wood. The wood grows, it feeds the fire. The fire becomes ash. The ash then evaporates, becomes earth and concentrates. It evaporates, becomes cloud. So that's a dynamic cycle that will go on forever. The 5 elements, whoever came up with the observation of how nature works, most likely 4,000 years ago, had a profound insight. Because whatever we have in the continuity of the ecosystem is based on the 5 elements. Air, clouds, provide the rain, which is water. The water nourish the wood. The wood grows, it feeds the fire. The fire burns into ash, which is earth. The earth then evaporates, it becomes the cloud, the air, which then rains and nourishes the wood. That goes on forever. It's a cycle that cannot be broken unless you take an element out, but it's not possible. You can't, this ecosystem that this planet Earth is based on, whatever this planet Earth is, this dimension is always subject to the 5 elements. So it always will have wood, it always will have water, it always will have fire. You can't take it out. It's not possible. So if it would be 4 elements, it wouldn't continue. But because you've got 5 elements, so the 5 element theory is in fact the power that creates life. That's the physical, yes? And this is what we call the 5 qi in Chinese medicine. The qi of metal, the qi of water, the qi of wood, the qi of the fire, the qi of earth. So those 5 qi now make the 5 shen alive. So when we are born, we are in the energetic realm, in astral world. When we are born in the physical, whatever is imparted onto us is now in each of the 5 organs, but it's via the Shen, which is a spiritual substance. It's a heavenly substance. It's from heaven. So that heavenly substance is now in each of the 5 organs. Then it becomes alive by the 5 qi, the 5 elements. So in Chinese medicine, in order to claim your true self, it requires to transcend into the 5 Shen, into each of the organ. At the same time, to work with the 5 elements to make each of the Shen alive. That's the key. So that's in fact Chinese medicine in a nutshell. So because Chinese medicine is primarily concerned about the evolution and the journey of the soul, therefore we always look at destiny as the ultimate, and therefore like purpose and direction is essential. And in order to do that, we need to sink into what is transcendent, inherent in each of the organs, because that's your individual makeup. And in order to do that, we need to nourish each of the organs, but at the same time, we need to live a lifestyle that now will activate the 5 qi from the 5 elements. So that's the qi cycle. The 5 qi is the qi cycle. So you start at metal, and then you go through all the way through. So you start at metal, you then go into water, then you go into wood, then you go into fire, then it gets dumped into the earth at stomach time. At stomach time, when you have the breakfast, you once again start at the kidney, and then he moves into the fire, into the wood, and then moves on. So obviously all that is in detail in my book, Clock On.
Clock On to Health, that's right.
Exactly there. Every elemental aspect is in there. As I said last week, the qi cycle is a very, very complex thing. I just made it very simple in that book. It took me 25 years, 30 years to get this down into simple words. Yeah.
It's a simple book then, yeah.
Yeah. I could have written an enormously complex book that probably only 2 people would read, me and my wife.
Yeah, that's right. Well, simplicity is much, much harder than, put something simply that's the power.
But the power, everything what I'm saying there, like, why do we get up early? Because we want to activate metal energy. We want to get the metal qi. If we get the metal qi, we will make one of the 5 Shen alive. If you make the 5 Shen alive, you become your true self. If you become your true self, you live your life. You got you. Basically, what happens now is you're experiencing progress in life. Yeah.
Yep.
So
very powerful.
Yeah. You're always. If you follow the qi cycle, and that means you get in touch with your what's stored in your organs, and you bring that in context to the elements, which is all of that qi cycle describes it. Every moment, every word will say exactly what to do. If you do that, you will develop. You have progress in life. After a while, I hear this all the time when the emails I get, when people will live it, and the more they live it, the more it works for them, and the more they realize, gee, I don't have those problems other people have, because you're experiencing progress in your life, where everyone else around is whinging and complaining and getting stuck in trying to know what is going on, by getting more and more stuck in behavior and beliefs. We we experiencing progress. As we're experiencing progress, we don't understand why there is a problem.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. I have people complain to me about stuff that's going on in their life all the time. I'm like, I never have that. I never get that. That's never a part of my life.
You know life is full of challenges, but you're experiencing progress, because the progress you experience that will nourish you, that will give you validation, is independent of what happens on the outer. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. The progress is, Chinese medicine is primarily concerned with the journey of the soul. And if, as long as we progress on the journey of the soul's journey, we always feel good about life. We trust, we have faith. It's just another challenge. Oh yeah, it's a challenge right now. Just like when you go to the gym, you can't complain because it's your choice to go in there, and you can't employ someone else to do the workout for you.
That's right. That's right. You've got to do the work. You've got to do the work in life if you want. I love, Jim Rohn says, for things to change, we have to change. For things to be better, we have to be better.
Yeah, we can't complain about the gym. I said, oh, this is a really stupid gym. Those weight equipments are painful. This is a stupid gym.
They're heavy.
Put it up on Facebook. Avoid that gym. It's discomfort. Yeah. So obviously, once we understand that there is a progress towards and a purpose underlying it, we have a totally different attitude to the whole thing. If the attitude changes, it's the same as you look at the weight in front of you and you just, it's going to make me healthy. Yeah? And so there's a totally different view on the whole thing. So
going back to that, like you got to almost remove external inputs to become nothing in order for you to have those realizations of what it is that you want to do, what you want to fulfill. And when we do that, and Nicole and I spend, we allocate specific time to create our goals, and we will often do that with no distraction. We'll go somewhere special, and often around water, or it'll be on holidays, or it'll be, set time, near the water where it's very peaceful, and we just get in that space of like, what is it that we really want to do? What are we called to do? And it's uncanny how, particularly Nicole, like she freaking ticks them off all the time. She manifests those goals like really, really every year.
Yeah, that's the beauty, because we are here to do things. And if we know how to empower the Shen in each of the organ, then by living in a certain way, we automatically do things, and we automatically got goals, and we automatically follow up on the goals, and we will do things. That's a fact. We can't not do things because we want to create. That's what we are by nature.
It's exactly, that's our nature. And that has an enormous faith that comes with it as well, because if our nature is to progress and is to do stuff, then by doing stuff that creates value, and then we're looked after. If we give value to the world, it comes back, and we're provided for as well. So that, getting back to our true nature, actually increases our financial security, our network, our health, and everything. It's all related. And I think that's most embodied, like when the old stories of the barefoot doctors. The doctors used to walk around China with bare feet, and they would only get paid when people are well.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's a key element. Yeah. So what we need to focus on in order to have that progress is to focus on the 5 Shen. And this is what we talked about last week. If you want to quickly, for those who haven't been here last week, if you want to quickly just post it, the 5 Shen are the righteousness, wisdom, benevolence, propriety, integrity.
Yep.
And then everyone can see that.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a whole page. I can't post it all in the chat.
No, that's the 5, the first 5. So the 5 Shen, what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
The 5 Shen is the righteousness, the wisdom, benevolence, propriety, integrity. They're the 5. They're the 5 Shen. So, and it is why those 5 Shen that we're experiencing the progress. So, so that means each organ has given to us the ability to be in a way that we're experiencing progress. And how do we experiencing progress? By having a behavior pattern that will be in line with the overall growth, rather than getting caught up in beliefs or what we think is an interpretation of life, what we think is real. So the idea is to trying to prevent false self. So when we talk about the 100 attitudes of 2020, it's about how can we develop the that what gives us progress without it. So that means there's no interference by the outer world. Yeah, yeah. And so there's no interference. So that means whatever we develop, you see, whatever progress, true progress, is independent of what happens on the outer. That's the beauty of Chinese medicine. Yes. So the aim is, because we are in a situation where everything's so confusing and we can't trust the sources anymore, whatever that comes from, therefore we can only go into the inner, because then there we will discover a true guidance that will move us, and then we will understand by intuitive understanding. And that's what we talked about last week. The intuitive understanding is a result of having the 5 Shen fully cultivated. Yeah. And so when we develop, and I'll talk about it obviously next, about how we do develop righteousness, how to develop wisdom, how to develop benevolence, propriety, integrity. When it comes to righteousness, probably the better word is, because those words are very difficult to translate into Chinese, into Western medicine, Western words. Righteousness is best explained as guiltlessness and blamelessness. So that means we live without guilt, we live without blaming. That's what righteousness means. So we are fully in sync. We act in accord with divine law. That's what it basically means. Yeah. And so then in Chinese medicine, I would say the 5 evils that make up the false self is pontification, secrecy, passive aggression, lying, and sarcasm, and complaining, if you want to put them up. Because they're the 5 evils in Chinese medicine. But a lot of scholars don't like to translate the word evil. So it's probably better to say the 5 enemies that make up the false self. Yeah. Because we don't have that word evil in Chinese medicine, the affiliation to what the Christianity would have. Yeah. So we don't have that devil with the horns in Chinese medicine. Evil means you go against what heaven imparted on you. That's what it means. Yeah. So we don't have these. We don't have a figure for evil in Chinese medicine. We don't have that that archetype of a devil in Chinese medicine. It's just as soon as you go against what was imparted onto us, you go evil, basically. Yeah, that's what it means. So it's not following the path. And the 5 evils that make up the false self is pontification. That means you're judging based on dogma, mocking, secrecy and intimidating, passive aggression, and lying and sarcasm. So every time, basically what it means is every time we engage with pontification, dogma, mocking, secrecy, intimidating, passive aggression, lying, sarcasm, every time we engage with those traits, we moving away from our original nature towards we develop a false self. And that means in Chinese medicine, every time we engage with pontification, dogma, secrecy, intimidating, passive aggression, lying, and sarcasm, every time we engage with that, we don't experiencing progress. This is very interesting because the person who goes into dogma, intimidating, passive aggression, is actually inclined to oppose the situation, and he wants to hint something is wrong, but by going into those character traits, you're actually developing a false self, because the true self would not use those character traits. So by going into sarcasm, passive aggression, we cutting off from that what was imparted onto us by heaven. We don't allow the power to come through, basically. So we're basically becoming powerless. So the more we go into mocking, secrecy, intimidation, we're losing our power. So this is where we now see that on social media so clearly, because it's the battle of beliefs on social media. It's the battle of assumptions and ideas. So that, and the response is always via mocking, secrecy, intimidation, lying, sarcasm, and pontification, yeah? And so on, dogma, etc. So that means every time you engage with those posts using those character traits, you're actually losing your power. You're giving away your power. The power is imparted onto you by heaven, and now you're going to, in the character trait, such as described with the 5 evils, what happens now is you're losing your power, and now you don't have progress. In order to progress in life, we need power. That's how it is. You can't drive the car without petrol. You can't go for a run without having energy. So progress depends on power. And the power that we need is the power imparted onto us by heaven. And that's inherent in the 5 Shen, and it becomes alive by the 5 elements. Yeah. So basically what we got now is 100 days of attitude, 100 days of avoiding pontification, dogma, secrecy, intimidating, passive aggression, lying, sarcasm, complaining, and gaining favors. Yeah. So basically, this is the real challenge now. And it's independent of what happens on the altar. That's the beauty of the progress that we're experiencing now as a result of that is entirely independent of what happens on the altar. Because nature got its way. Whatever happens right now is part of a process. It's not our job to judge it. It's our job to empower ourselves. And that means once we empower ourselves, that means the power is coming through. We suddenly know what to do. We know what to do without knowing what to do. That's the key. So if we're trying to know what to do, by going from knowing to from not knowing to knowing, we're moving into the false self. By going from knowing into not knowing, that means we go into the 5 Shen. We suddenly know what to do. Yeah, this is incredible. Like martial art is a good example of that. You train martial art intensively for 5 years. You're very confused about what to do. Suddenly, in a dangerous, stressful situation, when you're completely not in charge of your mind, without knowing what to do, you suddenly know what to do, and bang, you're in charge.
Yep. It's
been proven over and over. And like you do years and years of training, you suddenly got a stimulus that maybe would otherwise would cause a heart attack. Your body suddenly goes into exactly perfect management mode. Yeah, and it suddenly will do a breathing that will prevent an injury. You will go into moving the body by utilizing the muscle flow in a way that will not cause injury. We've seen this, we have 2,000 years of proof that in the moment when the training takes over, it's by forgetting about the training. Mm. Yes, so when we train martial art, but when we go into combat, we have to forget. When I go into counseling sessions with my client, I need to forget first. I can't go in with knowing. I need to forget. I need to be spontaneous. And spontaneous self-becoming is the highest goal in Chinese medicine, because suddenly you know what to do. Yes, and suddenly know what to do is generated by the 5 Shen. Yeah, and so because we've got such an intense situation right in front of us right now, we've got a great opportunity ahead of us to be part of creation, of being part of something awesome. Therefore, we need to go the path of from knowing to not knowing. We need to let the inner guide us, not the outer, because we can't make sense of COVID. It's not possible. We can't make sense of the politics. It's not possible. We cannot make sense of the economy. It's not possible. Everyone has got different ideas. Yes, it's just like we can't follow what people say. We can't follow the path of the belief. We can't follow the path of the or what assumption. We need to be guided from within. Yes. So we have to go away from the mind into the body. Basically, that's what Chinese medicine is trying to do. Yeah. So this incredible saying, from knowing to not knowing is superior, written 2,400 years ago, applies to 2020. It should be the motto for 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to, so how do we develop the 5 Shen? The first one is obviously guiltlessness, blamelessness, or righteousness. And that's the 5 Shen affiliated with metal and lung. And the attitude skill is, so we're going to, every morning, every day, we're going to prevent and avoid pontification, dogma, and mocking. Instead, we focus on listening, we focus on hearing, pay attention, be quiet. And that's affiliated and generated by the lung. And the lung, in Chinese medicine, as I write about in my book, Clock On, the lung is the night, it's strengths of character. So the attitude skill that we need to develop now in order to experience progress in life, in order to know what to do without seeking the knowing, is developing strengths of character, and that's lung. Yeah. And how to develop the lung? I wanted to share quite a few little tips here. And rule number 1 is, when we wake up, no coffee, no stimulants till after breakfast. It's the absolutely most important holy rule in the world. Just water, room temperature water, no stimulation with anything. Why is that? Because you need to meet your real self. You need to meet your vulnerability. You need to see yourself as a vulnerable being. Don't override it. If I have coffee, I override my vulnerability. I wouldn't have lemon in nothing, just water. Just nothing, no crutches, no crutches. Absolutely no crutches, just we need water and just nothing. That means there's no crutch other than purely experiencing yourself. Because when we see the vulnerability, we need in the mornings, metal is the starting point. Metal in Chinese medicine is the blade, it chops wood. It's the control of emotions. And we talked about it so many times in other previous webinars. Metal is control. And metal moves you inside. Metal is the emotion, is the element that moves you inside, within. And therefore, we don't want any stimulation. If you have a stimulation of any form of a support, it moves you away from the inner to the outer. I need to feel who I am. I need to see how yucky I am. I need to feel the symptoms. I need to see exactly what I need to look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sheer confrontation with the ugly self. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to experience it first. We've got no choice. Because if you override it, we suppress it. And then it will brew into a symptom. Then it will go into chronic disease later. This is the key element to all health. And I talk about it in my book, Clock On, over and over. You've got to start waking up to the pure experience of yourself. And then creating some kind of movement in order to activate the meridians. Because the meridian, the lung meridian, will then actually move you to the 5 Shen. And that's why we talk about breathing exercise, obviously getting up early. You know, we want to get to 5 a.m. or even earlier. And then the next thing is, because pontification is the evil, therefore, during the day, we don't use dogma, but we live by example. We don't preach, we do. So we share with others. We never preach, we share. And that automatically will now nourish the night, the lung. And we need to eat certain foods in order to nourish the 5 Shen, because it's the 5 elements that make the Shen alive. And the food we need to avoid is processed sugar, because sugar corrodes metal. So every time we take sugar, we go most likely into the false self. So that means the sugar will take us away from the inner. Unless it's obviously fruit, honey, real sugar, but the sugar will take us away from the inner. That's why people love it. It's like a drug. It's like taking cocaine and sugar. It's very similar. Yeah, very similar. It's got the same pathways.
But that's interesting because,
yeah,
like, for a long time in naturopathic kind of circles, you know, lemon in water is you know, said to be very, very good. At what point, if you wanted to do lemon and water, you do that after breakfast? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm trying to get the raw confrontation with the self is the key.
Yeah, yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have studied under the top masters in the world. I was really fortunate, and to have met direct access. And I'd spent a lot of time in Asia, training under the master directly. And in the mornings when we do the training, the practice, there is just room temperature water, nothing else. So of course, some people may work with lemon in order to activate liver, but that's an analytical process. You see, in Chinese medicine, we work with qi. It's different. We work with the qi of the 5 qi, and the 5 qi is more powerful than the lemon. It's a different approach. So naturopathy is Western science, Western medicine. We isolate. Okay, lemon does something on the liver, like that. But we work with qi. It's mystical. It's beyond. And I see the proof over and over with this, because the people who live this path are incredibly powerful people. They are healthy. They are strong. So the evidence is obvious to everyone. You just have to meet them. You know what I mean? Bang! You just go, wow. You know, these people are in their 70s and their 80s and they kick ass. They got a vitality. It's beyond everyone. It leaves Western thinking behind. The treasure, the Chinese gave us a treasure, and the treasure is Tai Chi and Chinese medicine. And in the West, we need to embrace that treasure. Yeah. Obviously, you can't mention lots of Chinese on social media this day because people think Chinese equals COVID. Yeah, and yeah. So we're talking Chinese philosophy that has nothing to do with what happens now in China. Yeah. It goes back to a wisdom that simply has never ever been before in the other parts of the world. Yeah. And so first thing is we want to activate the qi of the 5 qi, and sugar aggravates metal. Yeah. As I talked about before in one of the workshops, webinars here before, the metal foods are cabbage, garlic, nutmeg, pepper, the whole lot. And if you go back to, I think it's session number 3, you will see there's a lot of the foods. So the idea is not to eat foods that will stimulate, that are in sync with the 5 qi. And for example, turnip is the 5 qi of the lung, coriander, fennel, leek, onion, like cabbage, all that it nourishes the 5 qi of the metal. It's metal. If you think of a nice meal like cabbage, nutmeg, pepper, onions, leek, fennel, you can feel your lungs are opening up. Yeah, so that's where it's all happening. Yeah, and then the next thing, obviously, the lung opens up in the nose, and that's why, in order to nourish the 5 shen, we need to work with nose breathing. Nose breathing. If you develop nose breathing deep every day, if you go into nose breathing and develop the skills of nose breathing, you actually automatically and naturally will prevent mocking, secrecy, intimidation, sarcasm, and complaining. It's incredible. This is incredible how it works. It's just like it's body mind. The body will regulate our psychology. That's Chinese medicine, psychology, and medicine is one. Yeah. The next one is wisdom, which is good judgment, and which is regulated by the 5 qi water element and the organ kidney. It's inherent of the kidney. And the attitude skill for the next 100 days is no secrecy, no intimidating. Instead, true confidence. True confidence. Yeah. And how do we develop that? Once again, we work with water element. The water element is a chi that will now nourish and make the 5 Shen, the Shen of the kidney, which is wisdom, it makes it available, it makes it alive. If you focus, this is how Chinese medicine always, you focus on the body, it will make the Shen, the psychology, available. We don't resolve it in the mind, we let the body resolve it. We let the chi do it. Yeah. And so if you want true confidence rather than secrecy and intimidating, which is the 5 evil, for that we need to use the chi of one of the 5 chi, the metal, and we need to work with kidney. Yeah. And once again, rule number 1, no coffee, no stimulants after breakfast. Accept your vulnerability, because that takes you into your water element. Yeah. It's one of the biggest problems we have in the Western world is people wake up to stimulants. It's the biggest problem. We have never had that before. We've never had that before in the history of humanity. In the old days, you could not wake up to coffee or social media. To get a coffee, you had to go to the wood, chop wood first, you had to go to the forest, you had to get water, and it took you all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, by the time I have a coffee, yeah, the body was in sync.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coffee is not the problem. How we do it is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so kidney is the mother of yin and yang. And yin and yang is patience and will. Patience and will. So they are obviously completely opposite to each other. I have willpower, but I need to be patient. I need patience to have willpower. And that's obviously, wow. Usually willpower goes with action and patience comes with no action. But in Chinese medicine, patience and willpower has to be one. And that's yin and yang. That's the kidney. If the kidney is strong, you have patience and willpower. Incredible. That's, for example, opiates stimulate the Shen of the kidney. You are full of patience, but you have willpower at the same time. Yeah, like cocaine, really good cocaine. You have true patience and willpower at the same time because it activates the Shen of the kidney. Obviously, afterwards, bang, no patience, no willpower. Yeah, yeah. So how do we develop the kidney? Obviously, this is where, first of all, we got to understand conquering fear is the key to develop the kidney. Always engage with what causes. So this is where how we naturally will develop progress in life, because in order to generate the chi for the kidney, to have the 5 Shen, we need to conquer fear. So you automatically, by doing the 5 Shen, you automatically have to conquer fear. That means you automatically do things. It's amazing how the two things work together, yeah? Mm-hmm. And that's obviously where herbs come into. Chinese herbs, like well-being, it's like the Empress formula is a big one. Redox, you know, like obviously redox is it's like incredible how it works on the yin and yang of the kidneys, yeah? And, but now when it comes to kidneys, it's obviously all about strong, healthy bones, which means healthy kidneys, and that means leg exercises, lower body awareness, and like standing qigong, meditation, yeah.
I'll put the standing qigong video link in the chat box as well.
So the leg exercises are crucial to develop kidney, because what happens is with leg exercises, we develop a lower body awareness. That means now we actually starting to be generated by acting from within the body, as opposed to moving the energy up to the head. You know? So that's obviously, yeah, big one, yeah. Meditation is obviously crucial because it makes you sink into it. Mm-hmm. And passionate sex, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it goes from knowing to not knowing, from the mind to the body, from deliberate to natural. Everything that's from deliberate to natural will take you into the water, into the kidney, and will take you to the Shen of the kidney. Yeah. And we talked about it when we talked about willpower, about the 5 foods. For example, beetroot nourish the kidney and it will activate the one of the 5 chi. Spinach, obviously, and yeah, and so on. Then the next one is benevolence, which is like knowing what is the good action, which is wood and liver. And the attitude skill is no suppressed anger. Speak up, say how it is, but respectful. That's obviously the key now. So we're developing the Shen of the liver, the benevolence, by not suppressing our anger. That means we're speaking up, we say how it is, but respectful. And that means it's, once again, it's about the liver chi flow in that regard. And this is where obviously where Tai Chi and yoga comes into it, because the practice and the study of Tai Chi and yoga will inevitably take you to the ability. You can't do Tai Chi for years on end and suppress your anger. It's not possible. It's Harvard University made that incredible discovery that you can't do Tai Chi and suppress anger. Yeah, it's you will say how it is. That's why it's a martial art. You speak up, but in respect. You speak up with authority, with power and respect. And now that means you're not suppressing. Passive aggression is one of the biggest enemies of the true self, and it's a false self. And like a yogi or a Tai Chi master has the power to say how it is. They always express themselves. And that's how, because what we are here to express ourselves, because we all come from the same. And we got a different idea imparted onto us, but connected to the big idea. And that idea needs to be expressed. If this idea is not expressed, it's an evil action. So not saying how it is, it's an evil action. So you can see how by nourishing the 5 Shen, you automatically will be progressing, not in your own life, but also be part of the progress of the bigger. You always will say how it is. You always will speak up, but in respect, without pontification, without blaming, without complaining, without judging. You will speak up in full respect to others. And because you speak up with the support of the Tao, the Qi will support whatever you say and people will listen. Because you got the power, you got the presence, you got the authority. The authority is not a government authority, the authority is from Tao. It's the beauty of it. So we say how it is, but we are connected to the Tao, and we say it with love and respect. So we always will say how it is, and so we will not use up our chi. Yeah, and that's why we need somehow the mindful exercises that will connect us to that what's within the body. Yeah,
sure.
And yeah, quickly go through one more. That's shall we go through that a bit more next time, because there's a few more points. I don't, because we're running out of time. Yes.
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. Well, let's finish off liver, and then yeah, we've still got heart.
Yeah, because because basically what I'm saying with the attitude skill for the next 100 days is no lying or sarcasm. You know, if we develop a joyful life, yeah, maybe I need to talk about I'll talk about it more in depth next time. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good. Yeah, we are at top of the hour, but this is pretty juicy information. You know, like it's got heaps of great content. I hope everyone else is taking the notes. I'm taking heaps of notes, and you know, this really is profound. You know, if we follow this, we can radically change the direction of our life, and there's never been a more important time to do that. So I hope, yep, sounds good. Couple of great comments in there. Thank you everyone for joining us so much. Please put your comments and questions in the chat box, and maybe if you've got some, you get ideas through the week, write them down somewhere and pop them in the chat box when you join us next week. And actually, I can't. It's not next week. I'm actually going to be away next week. I'll be camping in the bush at Woodford Bush Week. So sometimes you need a different pace of life, and I'll be. I won't have any devices on whatsoever. So it'll be 2 weeks before our next call, 12 p.m. In 2 weeks' time, and we'll do a bit of part 2 of this 100 days of attitude. Thank you so much, Jost. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. So we just have to remember that whatever happens to us right now is all part of a bigger process, but that process never ends. So it's silly to focus on trying to end 2020. We've got to focus on going within, not outside. Don't focus on the outer, focus on within, and you will be guided to say what you need to be saying. You will be guided to act what you need to be act, and all that will make a great 2021.
Awesome. Beautiful wrap up. That's great. Lots of great comments. Thank you on the Facebook Live. They're commenting and saying thank you as well. Awesome, mate. Love your work. Have a great couple of weeks, everyone. Wish you well. Have a great attitude. Practice what we're learning. We'll catch you then. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.